Little Ham says it's time to rock and roll.
Bring the noise.
5, 4, 3, 2, 1, go.
Good evening, folks, and welcome to a very special episode of the Etims podcast. My name is Desi and tonight I am joined by our regular tactician, Hector Bandido. Good evening, Hector.
Evening, guys.
And as you may anyone who follows our Twitter may know, Hector does a lot of commuting to America these days, and I am glad to say we are joined tonight by a special American friend, Callum Murray from the Washington CSC, Iniquitous 4. Good evening, Callum, or good afternoon, Callum, or good morning, Callum. What time is it in Washington at the moment?
It's about 2 o'clock, I think.
Around 4 hours, that's perfect. So welcome, Callum. So the reason we have Callum on, as everyone may know, is Celtic have announced it's international break time, and Celtic have announced a North American tour for this summer 2024. So we're going to be playing Man City at Chapel Hill, North Carolina, which is where Hector is very familiar with these days on his travels. And we also play, that's on July 23rd. And we also play Chelsea on July 27th at South Bend, Indiana, which is famously the home of Notre Dame University. So quickly, Hector, before we come to Callum, who we're going to barrage with a lot of questions, Chapel Hill, North Carolina, somewhere you know very well these days?
I know North Carolina. I've been there a couple of times, but Chapel Hill, I went there for the first time a couple of weeks or so back over visiting family, and we thought we'd stop off. So for those who well, obviously it's probably not that well known, Raleigh's the kind of main flight destination for that area. And Raleigh, you've got kind of 3 town cities, Raleigh, Chapel Hill and Durham. They kind of call it the triangle, 3 of them, and they're very close together. So really, to get to Chapel Hill is about 20 minutes, 30 minutes from Raleigh, which is really good. And Raleigh Airport's similar in size to Glasgow, so it's no massive. It might even be slightly smaller. So it's dead easy access for fans, and you've got a choice of 3 places if you want to go and meet up, stay, have a bevy, and it's dead easy to get to Chapel Hill. Chapel Hill is famous for being the home of University of North Carolina, and for those who don't know, it's the university that Michael Jordan, the iconic basketball legend, that's where he played basketball for before going to become a superstar in the pro game. I was at the college campus there, fun enough. So unbeknown, obviously, Celtic were going to announce they were going to be visiting there this summer, and it's massive. For those who haven't seen some of these, you call it NCAA university grounds, they're like cities. They're actually like cities. It's just incredible. So if you think you're going to Strathclyde University campus, guys, So
it's not quite the Nautical College in the Gorbals, is that what you're telling me?
No, it's thinking Chapel Hill is the town city, and it's no massive, but probably university, it might even be similar in size of the grounds, not population but grounds, and it's vast. So I went to see the museum of the basketball, just to have a look at it, and the stadium. I couldn't get the stadium we were playing that night, but interesting enough about the football. So where their NFL, or what do you call it, college American football team, where they play is only about 400 yards or something from the basketball arena. So it's really famous over there. And I think it's kind of in a bowl. So basically you can get in, and then it's kind of walking downstairs rather than walking upstairs, if that makes sense. I'm sure it's 50-odd thousand. So it's a nice part of North Carolina there. There'll be plenty to go and see and do. And I think the fans will really enjoy it. Just one bit of warning would be the weather. There's a strong chance it'll be, the Americans still, Callum, keep it right, still do Fahrenheit over there, but it'll be over 100 or close to 100 come July there. What's that, 45 for us? So just be mindful of that. Anyone thinking of going, it will be absolutely roasting. But other than that, I think they'll have a great time. And as I say, Raleigh Airport is the closest one to it. Or if you go to Washington, Callum will come to that. I think it's about 4 or 5 hours drive, Callum, from Washington down to. Yeah.
Hector, you're right. You're right about the temperature. The last time Celtic were here in Washington, it was 104 during the day, and really, really humid. I mean, it was just like you're just sweating all the time. And then there was this horrendous thunderstorm just before the game, and the temperature dropped maybe 20 degrees just after the storm, and it was like 80. But I think the players were just walking out. They looked wiped out, even at that temperature. But they were lucky that it wasn't 2 hours earlier.
So we're playing Man City. So just before we come to Callum, Hector, did you see much of like the kids in football strips at all? Because what I've noticed, and we've talked about this in the podcast a few times, I've been on a few holidays this year, and almost everywhere I've been, like say your Santa Ponzas where you'd expect to see your Celtic strips or whatever, it's either been GAA strips or like this is the kids are in GAA strips or Inter Miami strips. That seems to be the only strip you see these days. You don't see Celtic, even Rangers. I'm not like or Liverpool, Man City, Man United. It seems to be all GAA and Inter Miami. And again, you see it. I've seen Inter Miami on loads of holidays recently.
So we were a couple of nights there. We flew in and stayed kind of Durham next to Chapel Hill. Then we went down to Newbern, which is kind of 2 hours away down towards the coast. It's a small city. But my oldest son, the reason we were over there is him and his family and the grandkid, he's a football coach or soccer coach. And I'd been to see a couple of games. And see, in general, there wasn't many in the way of any soccer strips, if you like. I would say, this is just my experience in North Carolina, it's very much the like every sport, like anybody else, right? But America's not quite like us. Like, we're really football. They've got about 4 or 5 big sports. And I think in North Carolina, I mentioned the universities. You've got University of North Carolina, which is where Chapel Hill is. Durham's where Duke is, another very famous university. And then in Raleigh itself, you've got NC State. So really, and Wake Forest is just a wee bit past that. So really, college, to a large degree, North Carolina dominates a lot of the sports and a lot of who the people support. So if anything, I've seen the most of would have been University of North Carolina basketball, kind of skip hats or T-shirts, and it's a kind of sky blue, like Coventry kind of city blue, if that makes sense. Yep. So wasn't there a lot of our football tops I've seen over there? And we went also over to Outer Banks, so that's a big tourist area as well. And no, pretty much it was all basketball stuff in the main that we seen there.
Mm-hmm. Okay, so that conveniently brings us to Callum, right? So Callum, you and I have been pinging for the last week. By some crazy miracle, I just happened to book a holiday about 3 months ago where I was going to go to Florida, then I was going to jump up in New York, and I said to my wife, I've always wanted to go to Washington. It's only 2 hours away flying, and then it's only 2 hours on to New York by train, or 3 hours by train. And my wife kind of hummed and hawed and went, okay, why don't we do that for the weekend? So I booked the Friday to the Monday for Washington, put it aside, 3 months later, Celtic announced. So Hector actually broke the news to us. I'm not giving away any. Hector actually broke the news on our WhatsApp. I've heard that we're going to announce a North America tour, right? And it started off, I think it was Chicago, somewhere around about Chicago was the initial mention, right? So that would be the kind of South Bend game with South. So that was interesting. And then it started to leak out. And then he's like, maybe North Carolina, right? Washington hadn't been mentioned. Even though it's the first game, it hadn't been mentioned. Then suddenly, I pinged on their WhatsApp. It'd be funny if it ends up with, because my wife hates football, right? And I have to say, it'd be funny if we end up going to Washington. Sure enough, Celtic announced a game against Desi United, bang in the middle of my trip to Washington. So that was, and then you and I start pinging each other. So here we are, Callum. So Callum Murray from the Welcome to the Washington Celtic Supporters Club. So Callum, the floor's totally all yours. Tell us as much as you can about the Washington Celtic Supporters Club, how and when it formed, how you get involved, etc. Because that, like Celtic Bars and his recent book and all the stories about Celtic Supporters Club, they're wonderful. And especially when you go around the world and you go and visit them. I know, as I mentioned to you before, being in the Singapore one, been in Toronto one, and it's always the same feeling, the whole camaraderie thing. So please, the floor's yours, mate. Tell us all about the Washington Celtic Supporters Club.
Well, it started in 1999. There used to be, back in these days, football or soccer was, as they call it here, obviously. It really wasn't a big thing. But there was this Maltese businessman who was very savvy, and he owned a pub restaurant in Virginia, in Arlington. And oddly enough, it's right across the road from our HQ just now. But it's long since gone. It was a one-story building. It's now a 20-story building. The restaurant's long gone. This Maltese guy, he put a huge bunch of large satellite dishes on his roof, and he started bringing in football from all over the world. And he would show games like, Brazil versus Argentina, and just get a couple of hundred people in. And there was a Rangers club that used this restaurant. It was called Summers Restaurant. And we used to go along to games to watch Celtic. And the pub had like 4 quadrants, and one quadrant was the kitchen, the bar, and offices. And the Maltese guy, the other 3 quadrants, he had TV screens set up. And so the Rangers fans used to go to the back of one side, and we were at the front. So we'd be sort of facing, he had a little sort of screen between us. And he made clear right at the outset that if there was any trouble, everybody would get barred, and that would be that. And we actually knew a lot of the Rangers fans, because we played football with them. Some of them worked for the British Embassy, some of them worked for the World Bank. And most of them were actually decent, stellar guys, nice guys, and some good football players there too. Some of them ended up in a team I used to run. And but there was a few bigots, a real few bigots. And they used to, back in the 90s, we really weren't doing too well. And some of these guys would really rub it in, call us Fenian bastards and so on. And they were taking a risk, because we had some big guys in the club who could have snapped them in 2, but we didn't want to risk getting barred. Well, it was back in, I think it was May 1999. It was a game at Celtic Park against them. And if they won it, they'd win the title. You'll probably remember it. We could beat 3-0.
Dallas.
Let's all do the huddle.
Sent off Reset, gave them a penalty. It's a horrible game. Anyway, for some reason, the game finished, and we could hear the other guys, yelling and cheering at the other end of the bar. And one guy, he was giving us, Fenian bastards and so on. And the Rangers fans left first, and they filed past us. And most of the guys were actually quite gracious, They worked with some of us, and they filed by. They filed past us. And we kind of sat silently. Nobody said much. And then one guy said, let's find our own place. So we looked for a place, and we found this bar, an Irish bar in Bethesda, just outside DC, called Flanagan's Harp and Fiddle. It was run by a couple called Jenny and Steve, and they were wonderful. Steve was from Belfast and was almost unintelligible even to any Northern Ireland citizen with his accent. But wonderful couple. They supported us, and they opened up for us, games starting at 7:00 on Saturday morning, Sunday morning. And we went from strength to strength. We ended up with maybe 50, 60 members. And we were doing well. We always made enough money to give a substantial amount to a registered charity at the end of the year. I remember one time we gave $1,000 to a nunnery and orphanage, because one of our members, his wife had been born there. And I was one of the few guys in the club. I was actually raised a Protestant, all the rest were Tims. And I went to present the check for $1,000 to the Mother Superior. And she wanted a photograph taken, so I put my arm around her, which outraged some of the boys at the club. My goodness, you touched the Mother Superior. I said, well, she was feeling up my bum, and they were even more outraged. But anyway, we were doing really well, and then COVID hit, and boy, that was a disaster for us because the pub didn't make it. Actually, had to close down. Everyone was shut. The boy who ran the club, Kevin Fagan, his name is, great guy. He actually kept the club alive for 3 years. We were operating on Zoom. But then we lost a lot of members. Some of them got old. A lot of them got Celtic TV at home and then realised that they were better off, or they felt better watching the game in their jammies instead of climbing into a car and travelling for an hour or more, sometimes in really bad weather. When we first started, we used to have fans used to come from Baltimore, from Richmond, Pennsylvania, West Virginia. We had a couple who would drive 2 hours, stay overnight, watch the game, and then drive back. And so when we emerged from COVID, we had to find a new place, and we were a bit like gypsies. We went to a pub in Crystal City outside DC. It was a great pub called McNamara's, and it was run by a really good Celtic man, Danny McFadden, wonderful guy. And but for reasons I won't go into, and nothing to do with Danny, it was wonderful. It just, the place didn't fit for a lot of people. And then we found this pub in Arlington, just across the river from DC. And it had been closed for 13 months after a guy drove his car through the front. He had a medical emergency, drove his car right through the front of the pub, set it on fire. Miraculously, nobody was hurt, but actually demolished the pub. And they spent 13 months reconstructing it. And it's now a fabulous pub. They've got the owner, Irish boy called Dave Cahill, has been really, really supportive of us. The pub's wonderful, the food is great, the Guinness is impeccable, staff are great, and he's got an absolutely state-of-the-art sound system, and he's got TVs all over the place, and it's a big pub. And he was like the Maltese guy. He saw the potential for football here, so he's now got fan clubs for Man City, Arsenal, Chelsea, I think Aston Villa. And so of a Saturday and a Sunday, the pub is absolutely mobbed. But it's a beautiful spot for us, and Dave has really been supportive for us. And gradually, our membership is creeping back up because people are realising it's much better to watch the game in company rather than on your own in your own house,
Yeah.
So that's a kind of rough summary of where we are.
So, quick question, and you don't need to answer this because I have had mixed responses to this question. How did you end up where you are then? How did you end up in Washington, if you can tell us? Because there's a certain person in Wales asked that question, and he basically said, I'd like to move on, if you don't mind. Some guy who was on the run from Maryhill at one point, but that was another story. So how did you end up in Washington then, Dave? Because even, and I warned you now, Hector, before you came on this call, before I started recording, there was a wee bit of an American twang in Callum's voice, so he's managed to lose it just listening to us for 5 minutes.
Well, that's quite interesting because, I've been here since 1984, so 40 years. And people are always saying, well, a lot of people just don't understand me at all. And I don't think I've lost my accent. I used to do a lot of public speaking in the job I had. And it was quite funny, a guy came up to me once, and a big guy, he was a farmer, hands like paws, and he shook my hand. He said, thank you very much for giving that presentation, but I honestly didn't understand a word you said. This was a guy in the front row as well. I go back I try to go back to Scotland. COVID interrupted it, but I try to go back once a year. And I meet the lads from teams I played with in various pubs around Glasgow, and I met a lot of boys in either the Snaffle Bit or the Horseshoe. And after maybe an hour or two, I might slip up. I might say student instead of student, or do instead of due, or Tuesday, something like that. And instantly there's like 8 fingers pointing at me. Damn Yankee, So I don't often make slips, but let me tell you how I arrived here. A lot of people think I was deported, but I actually was not deported. I left of my own volition because I was really, in 1983, I was actually drinking myself to death over there. So I thought, I need to get out of here. And I applied to the University of Michigan. And Hector mentioned that the stadium in Carolina, and I went to a football game, a college football game in Michigan and Ann Arbor, and I was thinking to myself, they're always saying this is a big stadium, and I'm looking at it, thinking this isn't all that big, and I'm climbing up steps. And then I reached the top of the steps, and I looked down, there's this huge 111,000 seater stadium right underneath me. Anyway, so I went to University of Michigan. I actually paid my way over there, but I nearly went bankrupt when in 1985, without me knowing it, the dollar had soared and the pound had slumped. And I'd left my money in Bank of Clydesdale in India Street in Glasgow, and I lost like £15,000, melted away as if I'd never had it. And so I thought, I can't go on. I can't go back because I'd sold my house, given up my job. And I thought, what the hell am I going to do? So I ended up a professor. He saw me in the class and he said to me, Murray, my office after class. And I thought, what's going on here? And he asked me what's the matter. He was very perceptive. I told him, and he actually got me a teaching job up in the School of Architecture, which kept me going for 18 months. And then I was really lucky when I graduated that I got a job right away because I had absolutely no money left. And I met my wife there, so I'm really stuck here. I didn't mean to stay, but here I am. So I've been here for 40 years. And I worked in Michigan. It's a wonderful state. I was there for 4 years. And then my wife had been brought up in Maryland, and her parents were getting elderly, and she wants to go back there. So I took a job in Maryland, just outside DC, and I worked there for 25 years. I really enjoyed it, but I went back home as often as I could.
So how did you? Sorry, Desi, I was going to ask. So how did you come back to the Celtic Supporters Club in DC? How did you hear about it, or how did the Celtic thing come out for you when you moved?
I was one of the founding members. There was no club. We decided the day we got beat at Celtic Park in '99 to form a club. That's when we formed it.
Sorry, I take it back. What I mean is, when you moved from Michigan to Maryland, which wasn't far from DC, how did you find out about Celtic matches?
Well, I was invited to run a football team in Virginia, and then another.
Callum, you can say soccer if you like. I know you're dying to say soccer, mate. Feel free. Fine.
No,
He keeps pausing at football. I can see it. Feel free to say soccer.
Well, the reason I pause is when you say it here, people get confused. They don't know what you're talking about, So yeah, I'll have to get out of that habit. No, I started coaching a football team in Virginia and then one in Maryland. And a lot of the boys were Tims, and they told me about the Summers restaurant. So that's how I went there.
You made me smile remembering. I was working in Chicago for a short period, and it was in fact, I'll tell you, I remember exactly. Remember the Jan Vennegoor of Heslink's diving header to beat the Huns in the last minute. That was. Oh, yeah. I was there during that period because I had to watch that game via the updates on the BBC website, and it was myself and a wee guy Alistair from Perth, who was also in Chicago at the time, and he and I were working together, and a girl Tracy from Texas came to work with wee Alistair, and this going through a working day. And suddenly this lovely, mild-mannered woman called Tracy suddenly jumped up and went, enough, like pure enough. And the two of us have turned around and said, sorry, what's what? She went, and she points at me, I can understand you when you speak to me. And she points at Alistair and she goes, I can understand you when you speak to me. but I can't make out a word when you two speak to each other. And he's talking about me, and we're like, no, obviously we were slowing down, speaking to her, but as soon as the two of us talked to each other, all she heard was this total fast nonsense. You couldn't make out a word. You know what I mean? Right, so getting back to it, so I honestly think it's really amazing when you hear these stories, but even like things like guys walking up to a guy in the pub and going, "Excuse me, mate, you ever thought about, would you fancy hosting a Celtic supporters club here, or any supporters club really?" But it's really amazing. But I liked it, and you also mentioned how the pub you're in now, and so that's the Islands Four Courts.
That's correct.
Right, so you're just talking about other clubs, supporters club. Like I was in the Boston, the Banshee Celtic supporters. That's the pub in Boston where the Celtic supporters club is. And our game was, say, 12 o'clock our time. It was a couple of years ago we could beat 2-1 at the Huns. And that game finished and I immediately left. And I met a guy afterwards back in Boston. Just happened to run into him. "How are you doing?" Blah, 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 the game. He went, where did you go? I went, "Oh, I just left. I was in the mood, I just left." He went, "Oh, we went downstairs." The Liverpool fans had turned up. So they had like a Liverpool supporters club all doing this. Celtic fans were up the stairs for the Celtic game at 12. And then the Liverpool fans had come in for their game at, say, 2. Nobody kind of whatever the Sky programming was. So they also had multiple kind of clubs there. So that was really interesting. In respect to the guys currently in the Washington, so you've been back and forth. So obviously you've seen Celtic a lot of times. Is any of them never seen Celtic live? Is this going to be their first chance to see Celtic in the flesh? Or if Celtic, I didn't get a chance to check the last time Celtic were in DC, if they would definitely have saw them live. Has anybody seen them live? It's going
to we get the club's a mixture of Scots guys, Irish guys, and American guys. The American guys, most of them have some connection to Scotland or Ireland, parents or so on. But occasionally we get guys coming in and they've never seen Celtic, and they've never even seen Celtic on TV. One guy came in once with his family, a young kid, and his name was McKillop, and he'd been doing some genealogical history, and he found out that his great-great-grandfather was on the original committee that set up Celtic in 1888. There were 2 McKillops on that board, and he was related to them. So he knew nothing about Celtic. And then he came along and joined the club. And he knew nothing about football either, which is just amazing. So, yeah, we get all kinds.
Sorry to jump in, Cam. Just Desi talking there about having visited a couple of the supporters clubs in the States. I've just wrapped my brain there. I think I've been to 4 over there, and they're all very different occasions. One of them were over in Toronto, and it was our son was at oldest boy university in Canada, so we're over kind of visiting, and it was a early Champions League qualifier, and we went to McVeigh's in Toronto, and that was a midweek one, so it wasn't like a Saturday game against them. So it was still had like about 30 odd people in it for like a Tuesday afternoon, which when you think about it, it's pretty good going. I was doing a bit of work outside Philadelphia, maybe close to 20 years ago, and one of the games was away at Old Trafford, and they beat us 3-2. Naka scored a free kick, and I think Vennegoor Hesselink scored the first one, and that was in West Philly. And I remember the game was at 2:45 local time, and I said to this American guys from Boston, no interest in football. I was doing some work. I says, right, no matter what happens come the day, right, I'm going to watch this game. Right? Can't miss it. We left the office at 2 o'clock. We got to the pub at 2:30, and there must have been about 4 people on. See, by kick-off 15 minutes later, you couldn't move. Right. It was incredible how it was a fair size of a bar in West Philly. And then on the Saturday morning, we had a 10 o'clock morning kick-off, and that was in, they call it, is it Centre City or something like that? Not City Centre, Centre City in Philly. And again, that was an Irish bar in town. That was good. But anyway, biggest one. So my first experience was St. Paddy's weekend in New York, right? And I was over in Boston. We got the Amtrak down, and through a friend of a friend, says, right, one of the guys lives in Brooklyn. However, get there the day before the game. because in there, a pre-St Paddy's do. It was the one we beat Kilmarnock 3-0 to win the League Cup. And I think we get Sutton sent off, but Henrik scored a hat-trick or something like that happened. Somebody gets sent off, but Henrik got a hat-trick, beat him 3-0. So we're there the day before the final, having a swally. And a swally becomes, you can imagine, St Paddy's, right? It was just bent. So I think we go to bed. I'm probably making this up, probably close to 4 a.m, at least, right? But that night, Shane McGowan came into the bar when it was fairly quiet, but that's a different story. I'll cover it another time. So anyway, the guy says, look, the game's on at 10 o'clock local time, 5 hours difference, that'd be right, 10 o'clock. Be here at 8 o'clock in the button, no later. Even though you're here, you've been great, we can't guarantee you get in. So we must have left there about 4 a.m, all day out, all day, you can imagine. And the alarm went about back at 7. We're stoated in, 8 o'clock in the morning, get in, and it was stowed at 8:05 in the morning for a 10 o'clock kickoff. And my big recollection of that one was when the game finished, when we'd won, was the huddle outside the pub, and it was the New York Fenian boys, and I think they were round about, keep me right here, it was about 29th Street or 30th Street, and they were there, what was that? That must have been 20 odd years ago as well, and that was brilliant. What an occasion, and the party, the bevy, it was something else. I've had 4 experiences over there, and each one of them I've really enjoyed. So all credit to those guys who run the clubs, keep them going through some tough times, as you've mentioned, with Celtic TV and everything else. And I just recommend anybody who listens, our listener, you get the chance to go and visit. If you get the chance to go and visit any of the Celtic supporters clubs, either North America or overseas, I would strongly recommend go and pay the guys a visit. You'll love it.
Right, I'm sorry, right, Callum, I'm sorry to do this to you, but you've just made me realise, Hector, I may be a bit of a jinx, Callum, right? Because Hector's just reminding me that when I went to the Toronto Celtic Supporters Club, it was the time we played Inverness Cali to throw away the league. Craig Bellamy back in the days. I think we get beat, whatever that game was. And then when me and my daughter went to the Florida one, it was Brendan's first game. Remember when we get beat? Was it Red Imps or whatever? That 1-0 defeat. So Callum, maybe we'll just leave it in Washington, mate. For your sake of your sanity, it might be as well just leaving it, because in case I bring you bad luck. Right. So, how excited were you when you heard the news Celtic were coming? Had you been given any heads up? Had you been given an inkling with maybe the DC United grapevine, etc.? Did you have any idea it was happening?
Yeah, we started getting hints from some of our members are actually season ticket holders at DC United, and they were telling us that Celtic are coming, and we're going, yeah, right, because there was nothing in any blogs, and then the day it was announced, every single season ticket holder at DC United had an email in their inbox inviting them, telling them that the Celtic game was part of the package. If they wanted additional tickets, there was a pre-sale 6 days hence, and we hadn't heard a cheep from Celtic. So it caught us off guard. It really did. So I emailed John Paul Taylor, and I said, we haven't had a heads up about this. And he was on holiday. We tried to phone. And so we were a little bit ticked off, because, if you're kind of the host city for a Celtic game, you got to do some work. You got to arrange, talk to the host pub. You need to, get T-shirts, badges. You try to get Celtic Rebel Band. You have to get.
Oh, Callum, Hector, can you hear me?
Yes, loud and clear, Callum.
Okay, hopefully Callum's frozen for a second there. This is he's talking. Yeah, so hopefully he comes back very soon. Let me just 45. So yeah, we're waiting on Callum. Callum, can you hear us?
I can hear you.
Right, so you froze. You
froze there, Callum.
You froze there at you try and get a Celtic band organised. So and the other things. So any other organisational things you were looking to get a head on? So
yeah, actually, and it is an amazing coincidence you'll be in DC because you know the owner of the four courts, he's been very, very supportive, and we'd like to have, you know, basically a 3-day event. And on the Friday we were thinking about, and these plans are in flux, by the way. We're going to try and firm them up, and then I'll put the notice on the various blogs. On the Friday morning, which is the 19th, we're thinking maybe we'd have some kind of podcast or Q&A session. If it's really quiet, and we might have a trivia quiz. In the evening, we're trying to get a Celtic rebel band, and we're hopefully going to host CSCs from elsewhere. And imagine, based on the last time, we'll get folk there from Boston, Philly, New York, Toronto, Ottawa, and we'd like to get a guest speaker or two. So I've asked John Paul Taylor if we'd really like to get an club ambassador. You know, we'd like to get either Davy Hay or Tam Boyd or Simon Donnelly or something, and have a Q&A session. And on the Saturday of the game, we'd have a brunch, and then we'd have another pre-game concert with the band, maybe from around 2 to 5. And the pub's actually about 15 minutes by metro from the ground, so it'll be reasonably convenient for people to get from the pub to the ground, although they have to change from the yellow line to the green line. And on the following day, if we get any luck, we'd have another brunch with the club ambassadors if they're available. So we're trying to make it an event to be remembered. And there's lots of hotels in the zip code where the four courts is, 22201 Virginia. There's the Renaissance, the Hyatt Place, Hilton Garden, Residence by Marriott, Clarion, and they're all within walking distance, so it's pretty convenient and safe area to be located, you know, for the trip.
Yeah, but it's carry on.
I was just going to say, I think it'd be interesting to maybe this time, there might be quite a lot of people coming over to the States from, you know, this part of the world, Scotland, Ireland, etc., who, because it's become quite a big thing, even when they go on the tours now. If it's in Europe, obviously a lot more go, but I've got a sneaky feeling, as it's been a while since we've been to the States, I think we'll get quite, I'm not saying anything daft like 10,000 fans, but I wouldn't surprise me if 2,000 or 3,000 travelled over there as part of their summer break and made the most of it. So, yeah.
I'd be surprised in that, Hector, but I'd be glad to see it. We've had I've been to quite a few games here, and some of them, I mean, we went to Cleveland and we're playing Boca Juniors, and we walked in we're all wearing the hoops. Big gang of us in a pub, an Irish pub. And the guy says, "What's going on?" I said, we're playing Boca Juniors tomorrow. And the guy said, "Oh, geez, how come nobody tells us these things?" He was really ticked off with his own city, Board of Trade, you know, that nobody had told him this. Sutton scored a good goal that day. That was good. We've had some poor experiences. We went to Hartford to play Liverpool. And I think if you remember, Martin O'Neill's wife was ill and didn't travel. And the team really didn't seem as if they could be bothered. We had a great pre-game session with the Liverpool fans. You know, a huge... we all gathered outside to sing "I'll Never Walk Alone" just before and all the people in the town, and they're going, who the hell are these people? And they couldn't figure it out. And we get gubbed that time 5-1, and it looked as if the team couldn't be bothered. So these were kind of a little bit of a downer, you know. We felt as if the team the club could have done us, you know, taken it a little bit more seriously than they obviously did, you know.
But if they know, I know you'd mentioned Celtic not being in contact with you, but I was going to say, just to slightly turn it around a wee bit, and you know this far better than me, But the fact it's March and the games aren't for almost, give or take a week or 2, 4 months, that to me seems a wee bit earlier than normal by Celtic standards, if you know what I mean. I've seen Celtic, I feel as if anyway, Celtic seem to announce their pre-season come May, right? So it feels earlier than normal for me. You maybe think the opposite view, but this is how I see it from over here. Does that feel the same, or is it, no, is this what you'd expect?
I think maybe it is, but I think it's prudent to plan ahead, as far as possible. And I've listened to your recent podcast, and there's been a lot of comment about there doesn't seem to be much strategic planning coming from the board at all. And if you're going to do something like this, you really need to plan ahead. So I hope they're going to be ready for DC United, because although they're not, they're kind of middling MLS team, they've got some good players. Benteke is a good player, and the boy DePietro plays for the US under-21, is a smashing player. I think he's only about 22, and I think he'll end up in Europe. But the pace of the game over here is you go to these games, and these are really young, athletic guys. A lot of them just come out of college, and their standard is getting better and better every year, as far as I can see. And the actual playing surfaces, in order to, obviously over here they play in the summer, so ordinary grass would take a real beating, and turf's not a great idea either. So they use Bermuda grass in a lot of the stadiums, and most people, Bermuda grass is just a weed that they get in the lawns. But if you cut it really short, it's an excellent surface. But because it's cut really short, the ball travels really fast. So the ball behaves a bit like you're playing at Rugby Park or Livingston, So they have to be ready for that as well,
Yeah.
How many? Sorry, Desi, I'm going to say, you come in a wee second. Just, so I don't forget. So in terms of DC United Stadium, appreciate they'll be in their season at that point. They're not pre-season like us.
Yeah.
What sort of? So how big's the capacity there, and what do you expect? Unless it's a friendly, so a lot of their fans like us might go kind of annoyed with it. Any idea what sort of numbers they might get for the match?
I don't know how many season ticket holders they have, but the capacity is 20,000. And I've been to a couple of games. I was with that one game earlier in the season, and the stadium was full. So I think it'll be full. Good. It's far less capacity than the other two stadia that Celtic will be playing in. So yeah, I think it'll be full.
Yeah, because that kind of make me question, even hearing you there, Callum, talking about various other experiences, Hartford, blah, blah, blah. Like, why would Celtic go to somewhere that's only got a 20,000 capacity? Is it a case of they're not expecting thousands of fans to worry? Especially then, as you said, DC United, it's free on their season book. So it's a Saturday night. So it's every box is getting ticked for DC United fans to go, I want to go along and see that team coming over for Europe kind of thing. It's not as if there's much to dissuade them. Like sometimes we're not going to bother with a testimony or a friendly or whatever. But like if they're only at 20,000 and they've got loads of season book holders, it's free on the season book. Suddenly it becomes very questionable whether Celtic fans are going to get tickets. And that brings us to what we've been chatting off air about, Callum. Regardless of people like me coming as a pure tourist, pure fluky tourist at the same time, people like yourself, who's a resident, who's set up the Celtic Supporters Club, you don't even know if you're going to be guaranteed a ticket for the game at this point.
Well, when we wrote Celtic, we said we need 100 tickets, and they just gave us the same site that they give everybody else, So we started looking at other sources. So we're getting our tickets from DC United, and because we have to front up these tickets, we're getting 100, and we've polled our own members to see how many they want. I've no idea what the response will be, And so we're hopeful we'll have a few available for fans coming in. I think it'll be. I mean, I take the point, Desi. I think because it's basically a freebie and slightly different, that most of the season ticket holders are going to show up, and it's a different. When you watch the games over here, it's a different atmosphere altogether from Scotland. It's mainly, especially for daytime games, it's mainly family oriented. You know, the demographic is different. You'll see an awful lot of women. You'll see an awful lot of girls. You know, you often see girls' football teams, all with their strips, you know, and they're all sitting together, you know, 11, 12. There's very little swearing. You don't hear any swearing, in fact, you know. The stadium is very, very, very nice. It's new, very well constructed. It's comfortable. Sight lines are great. There isn't really a bad seat in the house. The food is really good, although it's expensive. They sell drink. They won't take cash for the drink. You have to use a credit card, and it's expensive as well. So it's a different kind of experience, you know.
Yeah, and so do we have any aspect at this point in time of Celtic? Do you think Celtic will get a segregated area, so to speak,
Yes.
allocated
Yeah,
116 behind the goals or whatever? Is that already been confirmed?
We've been told by both DC United and Celtic that Celtic will be, most of the fans will be in a section, I think it's section 121, which isn't a corner. It's kind of a triangular shaped corner. They're not the best seats in the house, but they're also, you've also, as I mentioned earlier, there's not really any bad seats. So they'll get a good view. But I think they've set aside that particular section.
Yeah, well, if you have any left, please keep me in mind too. My wife may be on her phone most of the game. I will warn you. I don't know if she'll be supporting DC United. But I did, even today, like, I'd looked on like sites like Vivid Seats, I think it was. I just looked up to get it when I was looking just to confirm my dates for the other games, so to speak. And I seen there was a link to get into like kind of ticket types. And there's already tickets on sale for like $500 or £500 sterling. It's not even dollars. It's £500 sterling. There's tickets been punted for the game.
Well, you know, they've got an unusual and it's not really very equitable system here for a lot of, and Hector will know this, a lot of sports events. The clubs sell their tickets to a lot of these, like Ticket Hub and
Octopus,
Ticketmaster, etc. And they basically sort of auction them off. And you'll see outrageous prices for games, like the game where Messi was supposed to play for Inter Miami. There's one of our club members who had a season ticket, couldn't make it to the game, and sold their ticket to a guy for $350 weeks and weeks ago when the guy was expecting Messi to play. Well, Messi had a hamstring injury and announced he would not be there. Well, instantly the price on ticket stub and everything just plummeted and just before the game, if they don't sell them, they go below face value. So
that was my first experience was in Philadelphia, and I also went to see the Eagles, the NFL team play, and I'd seen NFL over here. You get wee highlights, but I'd never really had a team. Went along to it, the War Green, Philly, but I got it through StubHub and didn't pay over the odds for it. So like you, it must have been once. It was late in the day. We get 4 really good tickets together. And that was a great experience. That was more like I was really surprised actually when I went to that Philly Eagles game. It was more like almost like a football crowd.
Well, the Philly fans are just they're wonderful. They really get into it, and they've actually been swarming the Washington Commanders games. You know, they're just buying up their tickets, and they're famous for booing even Santa. You know, Santa.
So the Celtic fans now.
That's true. I did that last time. Poor guy. The poor guy.
Hector, your image is going dark.
Aye, so it's
Aye.
getting dark here. It's 7 o'clock here. So the sun's
Okay.
going down, Callum.
That was
Okay.
the 75 degrees weather I got in North Carolina last weekend.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, but I had the one, Callum, is there anything like anybody listening, we're third listener, because we're counting you as we're second listener now, we're third listener might be listening. Is there any security questions or concerns for Celtic fans over there, especially being Washington? Is there anything people have to be mindful out with the norm, so to speak? As you say, it's a different audience, a different way of behaving.
Yeah, Washington is kind of, for me, a very odd city. It's got the centre of it called the Federal Core, or the Monumental Core, is very safe. It's got the monuments, the museums, the Smithsonian, and it's policed by federal police. It's extremely safe. Criminals don't go into it. Outside is generally safe, unless you go like southeast from the central area, where it's really dodgy, and I would not go there on my Todd at night. I once had a boy he was actually a Rangers supporter. I'd known him for years. He came over with his wife. This boy was a really courageous boy. His wife was disabled, and he took her all over the world. And he was staying with me. And in these days, you didn't have the internet, so I gave him. He wandered around on his own, and he rented a car, and he kept his wife's wheelchair in the boot. And he phoned me one night, and he says, "Callum, I think I'm lost." And I said, "Where are you?" And he said, "I'm in the corner of, and I won't name the streets." I said, "Harry, that's a really dodgy area. You need to get out." He says, "Yeah, people are looking at me funny." And I said, "I'm really." He said, "I'm surprised I found a public phone." I said, "That's because it's used for drug deals. You better get out of there." And so he got out, and he was safe enough. He said, "Well, I'm not going to do that again." So parts of Washington very dodgy, So you have to watch yourself. But I think you're in crowds and in the middle of the city, I think you're fine.
I was just going to ask a question. So for folk who are going to fly over from this part of the world to DC, arrive in DC, how far would it be from the airport into the city centre or to the stadium, kind of thing?
Well, there's three airports. There's Baltimore Washington International, BWI, which is an hour's drive from Washington. There's Dulles Airport, which is in Virginia, and it's west of the city, and it's probably about 40 minutes drive. And then there's National, which is right in the city, which is a very, very small airport, and it doesn't have that many flights. From National, you're just a few minutes to the ground. The others, you're an hour away. Dulles has a metro system that's been extended all the way to the airport, and you'll probably be in it for like 50 minutes, but it would, with a change, it would actually take you directly to the ground if you go to Dulles Airport. And it's a huge airport, and it's going to be one of the biggest airports in the US.
In the actual Audi Park where the game is, like just looking on Google Maps, it seems to be in a nice big kind of park area. But it was like Google Maps is telling me it's like you go off the metro and it's still a 25-minute walk. Is it kind of as bad as that, or is it more central?
It's more like, I think it'll take you maybe 15 minutes from the metro to there. And there'll be crowds, so there'll be no problem, none at all. You'll find a lot of vendors outside selling food and drink, and it's usually a festive occasion for these games. Yeah, I wouldn't anticipate a problem at all.
I think the good news is when the Celtic fans start swearing after the first bad pass in about 7 seconds, I think back to your earlier point, the locals will understand the word we're saying anyway, right? So that'll be fine.
Right.
Yeah, they'll start. I mean, how much? And that's me being polite, saying how much for actual drink. I mean, like last time I was in America with friends, one of my friends got upset, and he's older than me. He got upset because he kept getting asked for ID for drink. and not waiting and be like, what's the big deal with having to go, there's my driving licence? No. It's a matter of principle, stop drinking. This because this pure stubbornness. And sure enough, one of my other pals came, we were in, I think it was at New Orleans Airport, we were in New Orleans Airport, and my pal was away to the toilet, comes back looking for his gin and tonic, and we're like, he's like, where's my drink? We were sitting with beer. He's like, where's my drink to the other guy who was getting a drink, Billy? He's like, where's the drink? And Billy just kind of looked away sheepish, and I went, you never got a drink, Stevie? How no? Because the waitress asked him for ID, and he told her just to ram it. So Stevie never stopped him for another 2 days, just because you couldn't conform. That's just the norm. You've just got to have ID. You know what I mean?
Well, you don't want to be buying drink at the ground, because the last time I was there, I felt a wee bit thirsty, so I went down into the area, and I've got these they're almost like caravans selling drink, and they didn't have much of a choice. It was a large can of Bud Light, and the guy said $18, and I went to give him $20. He said, we don't take cash, credit card only. And so when you get the slip, it asks you to put in a percentage for a tip. You're going to give the guy 10%, 50%. So I put 0. I thought, the guy's handing me a can of beer, I'm not going to give him a tip. But that was $18.
Oof.
Now, which is ridiculous. I mean, it's just exorbitant. If you go at the pub, Guinness will be like $9. So that's what you'll expect for a really good pint of Guinness. It might be $10. Maybe 9 or $10.
So here's the Celtic logistics question. From the four courts on the metro to the ground, is there a pub between four courts, metro and the ground? Because that 15 minutes could be a long way for certain Celtic fans to go, Callum, without getting a drink. So they get a drink between that metro and the ground? No, I mean, the usual.
If they're 15 minutes on the metro, you don't have access to a pub. Plus, you're definitely not allowed to bring drink on the metro. Or anything to eat, actually. They're pretty strict on that. It's a pretty it's a wee bit bigger than the going for Enoch's to Buchanan Street, but they keep it pretty clean, and they've got these metro police, and no food or drink on the metro.
I know it depends on numbers, right? And we're still almost 4 months away, so hopefully as time moves on, you get numbers firmed up from like Philly, New York, and even guys coming from Scotland, Ireland come over, whatever. So say you've looked at numbers, people have bought tickets for some of the events you're hosting, and it turns out you're going to have 100 people, 150 people, for talking's sake, right? Would you consider putting on a bus, or a couple of supporters buses to and from the game and then back to the pub after it?
Well, the issue there, Hector, would be that's a pretty good idea, but the question is paying for it. We're just a wee club, compared to Philly or the New York clubs. So, and we might have been able to front it, before COVID, but we're just recovering from that. So, but it's certainly something I'll bring up with the rest of the committee members.
I just think maybe everyone, I get it, it's logistics and the planning and getting the numbers firmed up, and if people want to do it, maybe have to contribute early to help with booking. But I was thinking, if you've got 100 plus people and it's 2 buses going to and from the bar all together and all back after it, it might be good for the bar, good for the supporters club, and good for the punters. Kind of thing.
Yeah, it's worth a thought. Yeah.
Right, a couple of wee questions, Callum.
Okay.
Is it? No. I'm just going through my wee list here. Is the embassy likely to get involved at all, do you think, in respect to this? Or are they just going to? Is it below their attention?
Yeah, there's Scots boys at the embassy, so they miraculously seem to get their tickets from someplace, So.
So but they only reach out to you, or you don't need to reach out to them for just in general communication things or anything like that. If somebody was to ping the embassy one way or other, they would say your best bet is to go to this pub. This, as far as we're aware, this is for the Celtic supporters, that kind of thing. Like this to make people aware of the best lines of communication and stuff. I tried looking on their website today, but it's shocking. It just sends you in circles.
Oh, I know, and no, I don't think they'll get involved at all, really.
No. So I was wondering if we're going to see the photos of the Celtic team getting the tours or whatever. But I know. But then when I checked the dates, I realised it's like the 23rd, then the 21st, then the 27th, the 20th, 23rd, and 27th. So I dare say there's not much time for the old meet and greets kind of scenario. But that brings me to something that, right, so you touched on it earlier, the whole interaction with the club, right? So there was a couple of things. You made me smile earlier when you mentioned a Liverpool game and interacting with Liverpool fans, because Hector and I had one of our best ever experiences down at Anfield. We were in amongst all the Liverpool fans before across the road. Went in and won the game, went back to Matthew Street and had won it. And it's been all over Twitter this week because it's the anniversary of John Hartson's kind of goal kind of thing. Yeah. That made me think of that. And that was wonderful, right? But one of our other big memories is going to Valencia, to watch Celtic playing in Valencia. And it was one of the greatest occasions we've ever had. But when I came back, I went away to work in London and somehow I ended up being involved with the Valencia Supporters Club, right? So Valencia. Well, listen, I can't help it. Cannavare caught my eye, that's all I can say. So I ended up being part of the Valencia Supporters Club for a while. In Valencia, right, we're not talking the big club, obviously. We're not talking Real Madrid, we're not talking Barcelona. Barcelona, I've got another thing I could touch on, but Valencia, every time Valencia go to some new country or city or whatever, visit a city, if there's a supporters club there, Valencia themselves organise a night with the supporters club. Nothing to do with like concerts or anything. They take the supporters club for a meal, and the president and the captain and so many of the team have to come. They try and make sure it's all the team, but Valencia pay for it. And I'm not saying Celtic, I'm just saying Valencia respect straight away that these guys are doing as much as they can to support us. We should be doing it. And I'm not having a go at Celtic. I'm just highlighting how certain clubs do these things, and it was one of the best things I've ever heard.
Uh-huh. Yeah, that's wonderful that they do that. That's really impressive.
So are you finding the same relationship at the moment? So have Celtic been in...
Peter Law's asked if we paid a flight for the team.
Peter Lawwell was actually the guy who was in charge of Callum's 15 grand at the Clydesdale Bank back day. He's the guy that switched.
Allegedly.
FX. He was in charge of the FX. Right, no, but so have you been part of the Washington CSC when Celtic have been there before? Callum, have Celtic been in Washington before?
Once before, yeah.
And how did that go then? Was that a good experience?
It wasn't really. I mean, I mentioned earlier on, they were really unlucky with the weather. It was just horrendously hot.
But like relationship-wise with the club, I mean, as in, did they go their way? Did they do as much as you possibly think they could?
We had zero communication at that time, and we did the best we could, and we went along to the game, and it was kind of despondent watching a young team of 16 and 17-year-olds, just half of them reserves, just run us into the ground, 4-0, and some of the players just really, it was kind of sad actually, the amount of effort they put into it, McGeady and a couple of other guys. But I'm hoping it's going to be a lot better than that,
I think Desi's point though, Callum, was I get the on-field stuff, right? Because obviously you want to see a performance. We all do, right? Even though it's a friendly, but especially coming to your part of the world. But from a club perspective, was the club engagement, was there anything from the club at all to say, right, never booked it, we're coming in 3 days' time, a meet and greet? Were they, even back then, was there anything at all from them?
No,
or was it still nothing? That's
Nothing.
mental, isn't it?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
but it doesn't make any sense at all.
I kind of maybe excuse it back then, but see now, I mean, we've been buying Celtic TV for 25 years. We've been on NAF CSC, the National North American Federation. They've got all the phone numbers, all the emails. They should have a database of every supporters club in the United States with addresses for their presidents and so on. The communication should be instant. It really should. And so we were kind of disappointed in that.
Yeah, it's not even that, Callum. Sorry, but not even that, Callum. You'd think it would also be, before they even plan these things, they should even be reaching out to you and saying, listen, we've got an opportunity of taking on DC United in July. What do you think? And you could turn around and go, well, are you aware that this is only 20,000? That kind of thing. Do you aware that the temperature's going to be... I'm not saying things that they don't know, but I'm just saying you can actually get on-the-ground, first-hand kind of information. You know what I mean? Rather than them just picking stuff up via Google or local correspondence. I mean, you can actually get a Celtic perspective.
Yep.
The other thing I was going to say as well, sorry, Callum, the other thing I was going to say was, go back to almost the start of the conversation when you're asking me about North Carolina and seeing a lot of football tops. And I said no, but bear in mind it was early March. It's not as if it's the holidays, summer holidays, when I was over. But this is the big difference now compared to when Celtic went 20 or whatever years ago to Washington DC. Is the grassroots in the States now. Soccer, as they call it, is far, far bigger than it was back then. My own son's a coach over there, involved with 2 clubs over there. And it's unlike here, it's both male and female, pretty much. In fact, I'd probably say the female was more advanced than the male grassroots over the last number of years, and the male's catching up. So there's probably an opportunity, if they do it right, to then say, well, look, they're playing DC, we're playing North Carolina, we're playing up in Indiana, to get a new breed of Celtic supporters. Say 100 from Washington DC United, their young kids want to also support Celtic, then the club that Callum's involved in would get a lift and a boost for that. Then you've got Raleigh, could start a North Carolina Celtic supporters club. So you want more American involvement, especially younger ones who are into football.
Right. That's a really good idea. When I mentioned going to Hartford, Liverpool had a slew of merchandise. I mean, just amazing amount of merchandise. We had nothing, absolutely nothing. Celtic had nothing. We've got 2 club members. One boy, Alex Burke, you might remember him. He was Scotland's under 21 Player of the Year a few years ago. He played for Kilmarnock. Big Celtic fan. He's over here. He's a licensed coach. He coaches a team called Northern Virginia. We've got another boy, Colin Herriot, also a licensed coach. He played for East Fife. He coaches a team called Annapolis. Now, these teams are actually in the 5th tier of US football. And myself and the president of the club, Kevin Fagan, we were invited along by these lads to see a game between the 2 clubs in Annapolis. So this Annapolis, they've just started a year ago. And they rented a stadium from the US Marines. It's 40,000 capacity, which obviously they have to pay for. And it's one of these stadiums with the huge colour screen at one end. And so myself and Kevin showed up, and I could not believe the car park was absolutely jammed with men, women, and kids all wearing blue shirts and shorts and socks. And they're having one of these tailgate parties out in the car park. And all the kids are playing football in the lanes and in between. It's like a grass parking lot or car park. And I'm thinking, God, how many people are here? And we watched the game, 12,500. 12,500 for a team that's just started. And at least half of the audience was kids, both boys and girls. And the game is just taken off. It's really taken off. And
it's not difficult, this stuff, Callum. It's not difficult. It's not difficult. This is the thing that we always say in the podcast. Some people might see that we're critical of those running the club, right? And I think they do many things that they've done it well. And we'll give them praise, but there's a lot of things that are just basics. And you think, how can you not see basics that everyday punters like us can see? So, for example, when Celtic go to play DC United, it's a wee thing, but it can make a big difference. Any kid that's going to the game, there's a T-shirt. Celtic and DC United in the T-shirt. What would it cost it to make? $3, $4, buying them in bulk, hand them out. And of those kids, say a couple hundred start adopting Celtic as their European team. It's just a wee thing. But why don't they just don't think of these wee things? What's going to happen now, don't you? They're going to actually do this and they'll take the credit for it. But I'm making a wee joke here, but it's a wee thing. But it's a wee thing that can actually get further interest that only helps the club, especially in likes of North America, where it's getting bigger and bigger, football.
Right.
You know?
Yeah, exactly. You'd think it would, the whole acorns and logistics, right? Okay, we're going to go there in July. We're going to go there in July. We've got 3-4 months. But what's the plan? What do we have to do to get a container over to the East Coast, get that moving up, not like get the trucks moving up and down or whatever, get them in places. You say just have them on site ready to go. And even if it's a case of not even sales, Hector, as you say, it's giveaways. Here's some nice big Celtic, big foam fingers, whatever the whole market, your kind of can coolers, these sort of things, all these kind of things you have in American sports. Ideal, and then it starts to tie in, rather than us being the people who are buying Boston Celtic stuff. I mean, because you go to America and we start looking for stuff like that, it's just madness. But that brings me to my final question before we wrap up, Callum, and it's been wonderful. My final question for you is, are you needing anything brought over? Because I was thinking that I wasn't sure how often you get back. Are you needing anything? I can't bring in square sausage. You're not allowed to bring in meat products into America. I know that much. And food in the metro. Anything else you need? Again, if you needed any like Celtic merchandise, because Celtic are not bringing it, you can let me know. I'm happy to bring it over with me, and I'll catch up with you when we're there. But
you can take him Peter Law's wallet. You can take him that.
Oh, they've only allowed 23 kilograms on the flight.
I appreciate the offer, Desi. No, but thanks very much. We'll have our own very small amount of merchandise, and then one of the lads, Alex, he'll be in the Celtic shop he'll be in Scotland before the game, might bring some stuff over. No, I appreciate it. You know, somebody once one of the club members once tried to bring haggis into the States, and it gets stopped right away. And you know, the US Department of Agriculture describes haggis as food unfit for human consumption. That's their official word.
Probably true, to be fair.
I think it was on the ban. It was on the ban list for a long, long time. I don't know if it's
still had it banned until about a month ago or something.
I think it's certainly on the ban list. So just to confirm, Callum, thank you very much for this. It's really, really good. So just to confirm your contact details, the pub is the Islands Four Courts, 2051 Wilson Boulevard, Arlington, Virginia.
Correct.
And the website for the pub is www.island4courts. That's FOUR courts.com. The DCCS Twitter. So if you want to just confirm that, Callum, because I know there's an old redundant account that people should avoid. So the current Twitter is CSC Washington DC. Is that correct?
Correct. So, yeah, we moved from we had a website, dccsc.com, and we've moved away from that now to Twitter. And before, we've got one of our members who's pretty good at this stuff. She's going to set up just a one-off for the event, a Facebook and Instagram account, and we'll be publishing information on that just as soon as we get it all fixed up.
Okay, and if anyone wants to spam Callum directly, I do have his email as iniquitous, iniquitous @verizon.net. So if you want to reach to Callum direct, he'll be looking forward to your call. So again, thanks very much, Callum. I really look forward to hopefully catching up come that weekend in July. Hopefully it'll be a really great weekend. Touch wood, the club does as much as it possibly can to make sure that it's a big success as it can be. You know what I mean?
Absolutely.
And again, it'll be interesting. We've no idea what players will be there, what players will still be at the club, these sort of things. Which managers will still be at the club, or which part of the management team will still be at the club. So who knows come July the 20th.
I mean, there's so much about Celtic these days. It's just a guessing game. You know, you just can't. It's hard to figure out, do they have any strategy? And it's really kind of just a guessing game.
Exactly. Yeah. As you know, we talk about in the podcast a lot. Is there a plan, or is it this basic incompetence? But let's see how it pans out. So, what's your last but not least, Callum? The rest of the season. What's your prediction?
Well, I'm kind of in the mine shafting group. I'm kind of pessimistic.
You and Desi are going well, Cal.
I know.
I'll get you that Guinness. I'll get you that pint of Guinness, Callum.
You corner of the pub. Leave you two together. That'll be
I'll
fun.
get $9 ready for your Guinness right here, mate.
Hey, if he takes his wallet, Callum, you've won a watch, by the way.
That's right. I think an awful lot depends on whether Carter Vickers makes it. Kyogo has started playing really well. I'd love to see Yang fit again, because he looked as if he was coming on a game. But the other thing that strikes me, you all know about what's going on with the referee resolution that's on Sentinel Celts. If you don't, just check it out. And apparently Keevans wrote an article yesterday saying that basically alleging that Rodgers is going to face a kangaroo court, and there's something not right about it, which is actually unusual for Keevans to say. Mm-hmm. And then we had that very strong Motherwell statement last week. So I think what's going to happen here, and you can tell me whether you agree with it or not, I think the cheating won't stop, but it's going to have to be a lot more slick it and a lot less obvious than it was at Tynecastle, to try to get the Huns over the line, because they're obviously desperate to do that,
Yeah, well, I agree. In regards to the whole Carter Vickers thing, is he well known in the US, or is he just seen as a guy who plays for the US who comes from over here, kind of thing?
He's well known. He's considered as a good player, but not very fast. And he's got some really tough competition for that place. So I think there would have to be quite a few injuries before Cameron could be, a first team starter for the States. But I think he'll be in the squad.
Very good. All right, so again, we'll wait and see what happens. So it's good to have a fellow pessimist on board. For once, for Hector's not got Monty to back him up here, so I'm going to end on a high for myself, or a low high for myself. All I can say is thank you, Hector, for joining. And again, we'll see if Hector manages to get to Chapel Hill come July 24th.
Can I just say, the weekend of the game in DC, we've got a big family wedding here that's been planned for 3 years. So the DC game's impossible. For me to get to Chapel Hill, I'd have to leave the day after the wedding to fly to Chapel Hill. So I think that's high.
So it wasn't an on-end, is that what you're saying?
No, what's the Notre Dame one? What's that one?
Anyway, that's July 20th, South Bend, Indiana, 27th. Yeah, don't never forget about that Liverpool game we mentioned when we beat them at Anfield. You and I left at 2 o'clock in the afternoon after getting a sudden phone call. There's tickets here, and that was us straight into the car. It was like a cartoon, Callum. Suddenly us two jumping in a car and heading down the motorway. So that was fun. So yes, so thank you, Hector. Thank you very much.
Thanks, guys.
And again, thank you very much, Callum. It was great. Best of luck. And as I say, I'm really looking forward to catching up with you over in Washington. All right.
Great. Look forward to it. A pleasure talking to you guys. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, guys. Thank you. My name is Desmond. Good night.
The gentleman will raise his right hand. You solemnly swear to support and defend the Constitution of the United States against all enemies, foreign and domestic, and that you will bear true faith and allegiance to the same, that you take this obligation freely without purpose of evasion, and that you will well and faithfully discharge the duties of the office upon which you are about to enter. So help you God. So help you God.
I do. I know Jefferson Smith, and I will personally vouch for him.
There's been a big mistake.
Why don't you tell the people the truth for a change?
You're not a senator. You're an honorary stooge.
This country is bigger than the Taylors, or you, or me, or anything else. Great principles don't get lost once they come to light. They're right here. You just have to see them.